My driver's ed class was 50% off. The program was called Vance's Driving School, and not many people knew about it. Rick, the instructor, was a fat, stout man with a dirty mind, who so desperately needed students he gave out coupons for his class. He didn't teach us much about the rules of the road. Rather, he focused on flirting with the girls and cracking jokes with the boys. During the driving hours that were required with the instructor, we encountered many strange events. Rick, my friend, and I stopped for lunch in a sketchy diner in a remote area outside of Portland. The menu had a few options: hot dogs, hamburgers, or fries, so that's what we ordered. My friend and I, being 15-year-old girls, needed to travel to the restroom together, but in this case it was more for safety than for fun. As we approached the table coming back from the bathroom, we realized Rick had a creepy smirk on his face. "Hey girls," he chuckled. It was clear he had done something to our food or drink. It turns out he put salt and pepper in our drinks. Whether this was his idea of being flirtatious or clever, it was just creepy. We were only 1 hour into our driving time, and it was already awful. At least there was one perk about this half-price class. We drove a stylish 2011 red Chevy Camaro. Who knows how that worked out? Our next strange encounter was when we drove to the car dealership so that Rick could test drive and later sign a lease on a new car. The next 2 weeks of driving were fun for Rick. We spent those summer days chauffeuring him around. My friend and I drove him to restaurants, his house, which was also his mother's house, and even his friends' houses, where he'd stop to chat for a while. He had no sense of time or respect, and I couldn't wait to finish his class and get my license.
I couldn't have been more ready for my first driver's test. The amount of times I thought about that day was probably borderline unhealthy. The 2 weeks I had to wait before I received my date felt like an eternity. I just wanted to be free. Free to rock out to my own radio station, free to go a couple miles over the speed limit, and free from my dad's terrible backseat driving. Over and over, I kept hearing about these amateurs who failed to get their license the first time. I was not going to be one of them. I knew for sure that I would get mine the first time. Please, I had my parallel parking down to a science. I could fake an over the shoulder like it was my job, and the 50-foot backup was what I called a piece of cake. I soon learned that I may have been a little too cocky. I failed to yield to oncoming traffic while taking a left turn. The oncoming cars slammed on their brakes and my driving instructor was nearly killed. Well, he was going a little fast, wouldn't you say? He didn't play along. No big deal, I said to myself. I still got this in the bag. Soon after this minor incident, he started directing me back to the DMV. We then parked and he asked me how I thought I did. Great, I said. I really can only think of one minor issue, but that's something I can work. He stopped me mid-ramble. "I'm sorry, Vanessa, but I can't pass you today." Instantly, my eyes swelled and the tears fell uncontrollably down my face. I couldn't believe it. I failed my first driver's test. I immediately sent in for my second date. After weeks of anticipation, and with a little less of an ego, I passed my second test. I was ecstatic to now be able to drive alone. I so vividly remember going home and pleading to my parents to come up with an errand for me to run. I drove to the store to pick up a gallon of milk. I jumped into my dad's car with the windows down and the radio blasted. And that was when I finally realized I was free. But now I just needed a car.
Once I got my license back in 2011, I drove a Ford Explorer until late 2013. Now I was spending almost $80 a week on gas because it was such a gas guzzler. I decided to look for a new car. This experience was an eye-opener for one. I settled on getting a Ford Focus, so I went out to a car dealership to look for one. I was there looking around when this guy came out of nowhere and asked what I was looking for. I replied, "Ford Focus," and he pulled me to a car right up front and told me, "Get in, let's test drive it." Now, this was not on my agenda to do that day, but he insisted to test drive it. I got in the car, drove around the block, and I instantly fell in love with it. We pulled back to the dealership, and then he makes me go inside to talk to him. Now, I was 17 at the time, I didn't know what I was doing. They knew that I was so young and wanted to take advantage of that. He wanted me to get the car today, and I kept on replying, "No, I'm just looking." Then he got his manager over. Now, picture those gangsters from The Godfather and Goodfellas. Now at 60 pounds. That is who came over to talk to me. This guy was weird, pushing and pushing to get the car now, wanted my mom to come down to the dealership to sign a lease and everything. I finally made an excuse and said that I had a lunch reservation and they hardly let me out. Several days later, I got an email from the guy asking me to come back to the dealership and purchase the car. We ignored the email and decided to look somewhere else. We found a dealership in Portland that had a car that matched exactly what I was looking for. We went there one rainy afternoon, test drove it, and bought it. We loved the car, and the salesman was delightful. Now I spent the rest of the night just driving around in my new car, picking up friends, and just having a great time.